It is Wednesday, my dudes and sister dudes, and Games Workshop has a rules update for 40k. This was not announced anywhere, so I understand if you were bleary-eyed and confused. I, too, have just woken up. There are 2 rules updates for the Adepta Sororitas. That will be the focus of this video, and we will not dwell on 10 raptors with 5 Power Fist equivalents between them. First of all, part of the FAQ has been removed, the section about using the rules as written for the Penitent Host vows. In the Codex it was written as, each battle round, select one of the vows, you can't pick one twice, meaning that on battle rounds 1, 2, and 3 you had to pick a vow. The balance patch changed this quite some time ago so that you can choose to use a vow in a battle round. You don't have to use one in the first battle round, it's your choice, but you can only use each one once. It caused mild confusion as the balance patch was saying one thing, and this FAQ was saying another thing, running off the words written in the Codex. There has been this eventual update so that we ignore this FAQ that doesn't matter anymore. Right. Games Workshop being behind on rules, but this time they're ahead on rules as they've released the Celestian Insidiants before the models have come out. That's the second big update. So although we don't have Celestian Insidiant models, unless you converted your own, which is pretty easy to do, this is a unit we're going to be talking about. The base size guide for tournaments has updated to include the Celestian Insidiants, and in a move that shocked everyone, the Voidsmen at Arms are listed as being on a 25mm base. The document had them on a 32mm base since the document was launched. I sure do hope people weren't rebasing to stay in line with this advice document. It's not like base sizes matter. Unless they do. Let's talk about the datasheet. We have the Acts of Faith so we can use miracle dice on our dice rolls. Good! When the unit is destroyed, we get a miracle dice. There's no infiltrate or scout, which seemed to be their job as they were like behind enemy lines, hunting for people. But not having infiltrate stops them being tougher novitiates. Keywords are pretty simple. Infantry, Imperium, their own unit name, and grenades. As we have the grenades keyword, we can use that Adepta Sororitas stratagem that we should use more often. Grenades. And their profile is a battle sister. There's nothing particularly special so far. You are familiar with the profile of a battle sister. Much glass, many cannon. Movement 6 inches, toughness 3, 3+ save, 1 wound, leadership 7, objective control 1. There's a 5+ invulnerable save, which is standard for the elite sisters like Seraphim and would be for Celestians with guns, if we had them. Haha. The Sacresants get a boosted invulnerable save because of their big shield. There are 2 unit abilities. Virtue of Intolerance. At the start of the game, pick an enemy unit to be your quarry. Whenever you make an attack against that quarry, so that's ranged attack or melee attack, you have precision and you can reroll the hit roll. If this was reroll to wound, then we could do real damage to psychic enemies because we have anti-psycho 4+ on a lot of the weapons. But reroll to hit is nice. Precision is really useful. Especially against armies with several weak characters that they rely on, like Imperial Guard, the Kroot, Drukhari. But a precision melter pistol against a Chaos Space Marine Lord is not to be sniffed at. These can be the assassin unit that we are missing. I'm not counting Death Cult assassins, which have so few attacks at damage 1 that they are unlikely to assassinate more than themselves by getting into combat in the first place. One of your models will have the Denuncier Oratory, so once your quarry is destroyed, as long as you have the Dialogus looking model alive, you can pick a new unit to be your quarry. And if you had multiple Celestian Insidiant units, they could each pick their own quarry. So once your quarry is dead, whether it was the Insidiants that did it or someone else, when you're picking another unit, just pick the next closest that you could feasibly wound. So don't pick a big tank, but pick the next closest infantry unit. Then you get full rerolls to hit and precision against them if they had a character in the unit. Their second ability, yeah, that's some fancy Latin. Rituale Nullificatus. There's a 4+ feel no pain against psychic attacks and mortal wounds. Mild resistance to those grenades. And if you know you are facing Thousand Suns, then you will completely forget you even had this ability unless you play against Thousand Suns often. We have a few weapon choices, and as this is a kill team unit ported into 40k, it's a little bit of a messy mix of weapons and profiles. The Superior has a power maul, but it has the same stats and is a null mace, same as the other models in the unit are carrying. You can swap their Condemn Bolt pistol for an Inferno pistol, and I would do that. One shot, strength 8, hitting on a 3, AP -4, damage 3, but with Melter 2, so if you're within 3 inches, such as when you're firing the pistol while in melee, you get Melter 2, so that's 2 more damage. And yeah, against your quarry, that will have precision. That has a decent enough damage to be able to take out an enemy character. 2 of the sisters can swap their Condemn Bolt pistols for Hand Flamers, and I would do that. The Condemn Bolt pistol has devastating wounds. The Anti-Psyker probably won't come up that often, unless you're desperate to pepper a Hive Tyrant in tiny stakes. The Hand Flamers give you D6 shots rather than 1 shot, same range as the Condemn Bolt pistol, same strength 4, same AP, same damage. It's more shots and they auto-hit. Hand Flamers are preferable. 2 of your sisters can swap their Bolt pistol and their Null Mace with the Blessed Sword. This is the model with the big sword, and also the model with the sword and the shield. The shield does nothing. Not in 40k, it may do in kill team. The Blessed Sword is 3 attacks, with lethal hits, you hit on a 3, it's only strength 4, it's AP -2, and importantly 2 damage. So this is ever so slightly better than the Celestian Sacresant Mauls. It has 1 more point of armor penetration. We can only have 2 of them. I would have 2 of them. Because the Null Mace that most of the rest of the sisters are equipped with are only strength 4, AP -1, and damage 1. You have Anti-Psyker 4+, you have Devastating Wounds, so the Devastating Wounds would trigger on a 4+ against enemy Psykers, because the Anti-Psyker part gives you critical wounds against Psykers on a 4+, and Devastating Wounds triggers on critical wounds. But if the enemy doesn't have a lot of Psykers, like you're facing Necrons, better to have the Blessed Sword. Of course, if you knew you were facing a Psychic enemy, you could spec out this whole unit to have the Condemn Bolt pistols and the Null Maces, forget the Blessed Swords. But that's a very small number of enemy armies. 1 sister with a Null Mace and a Condemn Bolt pistol can drop the Condemn Bolt pistol to have the Denuncia Oratoria. This is the Dialogus looking model. We want a Denuncia Oratoria so that we can have full rerolls to hit and precision against another unit in future after the first one we were trying to get rid of is dead. Another sister's Condemn Bolt pistol and Null Mace can be swapped with the Verge of Admonition. This is the very big stick. Not Simulacra Imperialis big stick, but big hitty stick. 3 attacks, strength 6, hitting on a 4+, so we want those rerolls to hit, -2 and 3 damage, with Anti-Psyker 4+, with Devastating Wounds. If you can hit a Hive Tyrant with this, and if you have rerolls to hit, you might be able to get 2 of them through, hitting on a 4+ with rerolls, wounding on a 4+, and with Devastating Wounds to go through their save and invulnerable save. That's 6 wounds to a Hive Tyrant. That's pretty nice. This is definitely an upgrade to take. I think you want all of these upgrades. And finally, 1 sister who has a regular Condemn Bolt pistol can have a Simulacra Imperialis. Might as well, you don't lose anything. You still have the Null Mace, you still have the Condemn Bolt pistol, but now if you're on an objective marker that you control, you can roll a dice. If it's a 1, 2, or a 3, you get nothing. If it's a 4, you get a Miracle Dice of a 4. If it's a 5, you get a Miracle Dice of a 5. If it's a 6, you get a Miracle Dice of a 6. That's what it means when it says roll a d6, on a 4+, you gain 1 Miracle Dice showing a value equal to the result. So, all of the upgrades, please. But are we going to see this unit in play? Are we going to see them in regular 40k very much? The obvious unit to compare them to are the Celestian Sacresants. There is a worse invulnerable save on the Insidiants, 5+ rather than 4+. And we don't have as much resistance. Oh, we have a feel no pain against mortal wounds and psychic attacks, but as soon as the Sacresants are joined by a character, that whole unit is -1 to be wounded. The Insidiants can only be a unit of 10, but despite the Sacresant option of 5 or 10 of them, they don't do enough as a squad of 5 to be worth it compared to cheaper units which do a similar job. 3 Arcoflagellants. All 5 Sacresants would really be able to do is sit on an objective. They haven't got the damage output to do anything against enemy units. 10 Sacresants is 140 points currently. That's 20 more points than the Celestian Insidiants, who rack in at 120 points. The Insidiants have quite a few special weapons. The swords, the big stick, 2 extra hand flamers, and a slightly better bolt pistol. The Sacresant Mauls, the basic Mauls, are damage 2. Or we have the halberds that are strength 5 and AP -2 and damage 1. That looks better than the Null Maces. The Insidiants have 2 damage 2 swords and 1 damage 3 big stick. That doesn't quite make up for it. The Sacresants are more survivable once you add a character. The Insidiants will die as fast as Battle Sisters. If you couldn't afford a character for your Sacresants because of points going up, as they did in December 2025, picking cheaper Insidiants is an okay choice. I will need to see them in my hand, but I like the look of the Insidiant models over the Sacresants, and at some point I will give the unit a try. Now that we have the rules, why not? Let me know what you think and how they compare to the Celestian Sacresants. Maybe my Army of Faith army will work pretty well if I don't need to swap out Dominions for Battle Sisters, and I instead swap the Celestian Sacresants for Celestian Insidiants. And they can still be led by my Canoness. Now, any character that can join Dominions can join the Celestian Insidiant unit. If it had said Battle Sister Squad, then we could have a powerful bodyguard for the Triumph of St. Catherine. But instead, Triumph of St. Catherine is not an option. Importantly, the Celestian Insidiants are not Dominions and don't count rules as if they were the Dominions. So the Minister and Priest Holy Mission won't do anything. And also, this Celestian Insidiant unit cannot be split by an Immolator. The Immolator specifies that it can only split up a unit of 10 Battle Sisters, Dominions, or Novitiates. No other unit gets split into 2. Okay? If you want to transport, a Rhino or Repressor are your options, and because of the limited guns to make use of the Repressor firing deck, stick with the Rhino. That's a good unit to get them to their quarry. So on those characters, no doubling up on characters. Doubling up on characters is for Battle Sister squads only. Check your Dialogus and your Hospitaller rules and you will see that in a Battle Sister squad, you can have this character and also like a Canoness or a Palatine. I think the Palatine may be the best choice of character. They love that reroll to hit to get more lethal hits. That is why she is often paired with Novitiates. And Precision works really well with an interaction from her Rapturous Blows. Those are mortal wounds. If your attacks have precision and those attacks also cause mortal wounds, those mortal wounds are applied as per precision. So if you know how many successful wounds you've caused with the Palatine, you know how many mortal wounds you're going to do, you can just swipe into the bodyguard and then apply all the mortal wounds to the enemy character. The lethal hits that the Palatine gives the unit does take away the chance for devastating wounds, as a successful lethal hit means you don't roll a wound roll. But unless attacking a psychic unit, I think we're okay auto-wounding with the low strength 4 attacks. And if you were really particular about it, any 6s that were 6s to hit, you could re-roll to try and get a 3, 4, or 5. I wouldn't bother, I'd be fine with the lethal hit. Palatine, good choice. A Minister and Priest will give the unit +1 to wound, that gives it a bit more combat power. That does not interact with critical wounds. The anti-rule and devastating wounds and what is a critical hit or critical wound is based off an unmodified dice roll. So you don't get devastating wounds on a 5+ or devastating wound 3+ against Psykers. Any of your attacks that were not devastating wounds will get +1 to the wound roll. It's good for the priest to be able to help out the combat weapons and in turn be helped out. The Vindictor will have precision on both parts of the weapon and re-rolls to hit are useful. The priest is a viable option. Astrid and Agatha much less so. We already have devastating wounds on most of our weapons. The only major bonus is if we destroyed an enemy unit, like the quarry, we would get a miracle dice. I think we'll be fine without. That's a lot of points. If you have a Canoness with a Blessed Blade, that's a good choice to join the Insidiants. We don't need the Null Rod because that gives you a Feel No Pain of 4+ against mortal wounds and psychic attacks. That's one of the Insidiants rules. If you wanted that rule somewhere else, that's where you'd have a Canoness with a Null Rod elsewhere. We don't need the Rod of Office to reroll hit rolls of 1 because assuming we can get to our quarry, we're rerolling all the hit rolls. So have the Blessed Blade, and with those rerolls to hit, we can try and get more lethal hits. If needed, if you weren't already wounding on like a 3+. There are no stratagems beside grenades that we're desperate to use on the Insidiants in a big combo. But grenades for free is nice. That's often what I end up using Sacred Command on. Or there are some useful stratagems to use at like any time in the Army of Faith. We'll look at stratagems and detachment abilities in a minute. Dialogus! That's a good option. If the Verge of Admonition gets a 6 to wound, as it has devastating wounds, that's 3 devastating wounds. A Dialogus turns any miracle dice into a 6. That could be good value, and you can do this twice per phase if you're in the Army of Faith. I'm an Army of Faith main, I keep thinking about the Army of Faith, but that's good, that's really good. If you had a Hospitaller, you can keep the unit alive longer, but this is not as effective as putting a Hospitaller with Sacresants. As we already have potentially a Feel No Pain against some attacks, I think this is one of the few units that might be better with an Imagifier. Unfortunately, the Imagifier is currently more points than the Hospitaller, but a 2+ save and upping their 5+ invulnerable to a 4+ invulnerable could give the Insidiants more defense. I don't know if that's worth it. You may be better off running the Insidiants at a unit, destroying that unit, and probably dying very quickly afterwards. Don't spend more points to make this a more expensive loss. The Insidiants could be a good bodyguard for Junith Arawita. Those heavy flamers getting precision is kind of funny. Burn that guy in particular. Enemies would be at -1 to hit the Insidiants due to St. Helene's Basilica, so there's your defense. Sort of. Unfortunately, you're putting Junith in danger. I don't like putting Junith in danger. She's meant to stay at home, or she goes onto an objective that's less likely to be attacked. There she can generate command points for us. That's not exactly compatible with the Insidiants getting stuck in and smashing someone. And you could have a Dogmata. That's another stick. But we don't need the extra objective control. We want to keep hunting down enemies. We don't ever want to be standing around trying to hold an objective. That's a Battle Sister's job. That's an Novitiate job. That's a job for our small units like Archoflagellants, Crusaders, and Deathcult Assassins. So what is the best detachment to use this unit in? Well, there's no particular benefits from any of the detachments. In the Hallowed Martyrs, Righteous Vengeance gives you full rerolls to hit. We already have a way of getting full rerolls to hit. However, if the unit was knocked down below half strength, so you've only got 4 models or fewer left, then you can also have full rerolls to wound. If you were against a psychic enemy, then you're more likely to get those devastating wounds. Otherwise, you're rerolling wound rolls to maybe try and get another 6. That's nothing super special. But as a squad of 10, taking 1 or 2 casualties, not being entirely wiped out in one go, means that you can get a little bit of a boost from the detachment rule. +1 to hit, not bad. In the Army of Faith, if we're adding a character like a Canoness, like a Palatine, you can spare points by not needing to bother with St. Eleanor's Blade, especially on a Palatine. You don't need precision from it, because you get precision from the unit. The Insidiants would like Divine Guidance for extra points of armor penetration in combat. Make it a bit more likely that anything that isn't a devastating wound will go through the enemy save. The Insidiants are more of a combat unit than a shooting unit. I know they do a little bit of shooting, that's alright, but they don't get much from the Bringers of Flame. And they're not penitent, so there's nothing special from the Penitent Host. In the Champions of Faith, which is all about the elites, the Celestians, well, these are not Celestians that are listed as special units in the detachment rule, so they won't get +1 to hit if righteous. If righteous, they will move 1 inch more and have +1 leadership, and they can use To the Heart of Heresy. That's a useful stratagem for them. When I've play tested the unit to see what they can do, I'll report back with more. As it stands, they look like a pretty fun unit, but are unlikely to replace the incredibly similar Celestian Sacresants, which do a near identical job, but the Celestian Sacresants can be much tougher, something the Adepta Sororitas have a big weakness with. With toughness 3 and 1 wound, we die pretty quickly. Have a look through the different detachments and strategies and super tactics that we have, and see if anything else comes to mind. Let me know how you're going to use them, and my darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.